Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. We're here for a city council meeting, and it's Monday, July 19th, 2021. We'll start the meeting off with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Nordstrom.
Here.
Weifenbach. Here. Roberts. Here. Strommmen. Here. Armstrong. Here. Jones.
Here.
Lehman. Here. Solomon. Here. Evans. Here. Drew. Here. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Now for the invocation, I do not see our invocator, Ron. So we're going to go to our second string invocator, council member Pat Jones.
Coming in off the bench.
Following the invocation, then we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I invite you to rise and join me in a state of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the opportunity to gather, to lead, to listen, and to grow as a city. We ask your blessing upon our community of Rapid City. We ask your blessing upon our visitors that are here. We ask you to keep all of us safe, protect us from the evil of the world. As we move forward, we ask that you would provide guidance to the people that make the decisions, and may we once again experience a sense of trust, belief, and unity in each other and in ourselves. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. And now for the adoption of the agenda. This is a time when the council members may adopt the agenda as written or make certain alterations to it. Would there be a motion? Motion to approve by Jones, second by Lehman. All in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Now, the next under awards and recognitions, I have a proclamation for the American with Disabilities Act. If I could invite Dr. Mazepust and Katie Peterson up and anyone else who came from the group, okay? Whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was passed on July 20, 1990 to ensure the civil rights of citizens. And whereas Rapid City, South Dakota affirms the principles of equality and inclusion for persons with disabilities as set forth for the state of South Dakota as embodied in the ADA, the laws of the state of South Dakota, and the ordinances of Rapid City. And whereas the ADA prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in public accommodations, employment, transportation, state and local government services, commercial facilities, and telecommunications. And whereas through the dedicated and tireless efforts of officials, organizations, and advocates, many strides have been made and work continues in breaking down the physical and attitudinal barriers that have challenged people with disabilities. And whereas numerous organizations in Rapid City work with constituents to bring forth the promise of hope and freedom envisioned by the passage of the ADA, and whereas the City of Rapid City continues its commitment to ADA compliance and accessibility with improvements to public facilities, providing increased quality of life experiences in the community for people with disabilities, and supporting the continued work and awareness efforts of the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities. And whereas July 26, 2021 celebrates the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, now therefore I, Steve Allender, Mayor of Rapid City, South Dakota, do hereby proclaim July 26, 2020 as the Americans with Disabilities Act Awareness Day in Rapid City. And here with me today have a couple members of the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities, Dr. Steve Mazepust and Katie Peterson. I would turn it over to them.
Thank you, Mayor Allender. I appreciate the proclamation for an awareness day. July 26th is the 31st anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. This essentially provided civil rights protection for people with disabilities, which had been provided for people on the basis of race, religion, national origin, age, and sex prior to that by the Civil Rights Act in 1964. The reason we're excited about having this awareness day here is that we feel that increasing public awareness of people with disabilities and some of the issues that they have is one of the ways that we can incorporate disabled people into the community on an equal and inclusive basis. Any questions?
I don't usually speak at the microphone. I prefer to hang out in the back, but I just think that the emphasis in the words there is a work in progress, and we just think that any awareness is good, so we'll keep working on it.
Well, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. So I have 2 speaker requests for general public comment and 2 requests for number 9, which we'll handle right after this. You can watch your lights up here. All the speakers have 3 minutes this evening. And we'll start with Carla Schanzenbach.
That's close enough, thank you. I recently moved to Ward 2. I was in Ward 3. My name is Carla Schanzenbach again. I recently quit work and I am getting ready to jump into politics on a cause that is of concern to me, which is the potential vaccine mandates for our children in universities and schools. And as I was stopping to think about this a little bit, I wanted to take a little bit of a step back and say that I want to be able to try to interface with people who also have other concerns and have viewpoints differing than my own. So what I would like to ask, think about this a little bit just in the couple things I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to give you my email address and phone number. If you have people that you can contact, put me in contact with where we can discuss, have opportunities to exchange ideas, I would really appreciate it. Back in November, one of the things I was concerned about around the mask mandates was when the vaccine rolled out that they would be tending to think that this would be a great idea for, excuse me, all peoples and all populations, especially when we're looking at from our young children and our adults of childbearing age. This product that is out there does not have any really information on infertility aspects to it. And I know that that is a concern for parents, it's a concern for the young adults I have, and it is also a concern, I think, for other people. So again, there's lots of things I have issues with, but to mandate a product without this information cannot be taken back. If you get this vaccine and you're rendered infertile, and that happens across a large population because they're rolling it out globally, this could be a catastrophic event. And I think people need to have the right to say no. So again, I understand there's fear, there's lots of other things, so I really want to be able to talk to other people in our community, and especially those that would have a different opinion. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Kagan Duffy.
Hello, my name is Keegan Duffy. I was born and raised here in the settlement of Rapid City, land of the Ocheti Shakowee, at the edge of the sacred Black Hills, Hey Sapa, the heart of all that is. I'm a college sophomore studying the arts and humanities in the Gulf of Maine occupied Wabanaki territory. I've come to stand in opposition to Rapid City Police Chief Don Hendrick's request for an additional $1.8 million of public funds for the establishment of a second police precinct on the southwest side of town. I want to remind my white colleagues that U.S. colonization of indigenous people is a clear and present reality. With stolen and non-renewable resources, we continue to occupy land which our white ancestors stole in a series of horrific, violent, and unconstitutional engagements with the original people. Everything about the Rapid City Police Department is illegitimate, and before you scoff, I encourage you to research the Trail of Broken Treaties once this meeting is adjourned. Colonization is our past and present, and this City Council has the power to stop it from being our future. Indigenous people are still here, fighting courageously for the return of their land so that they can protect it from relentless exploitation at the hands of the U.S. government and other private entities who believe that the earth exists to generate capital profit. To invest $1.8 million into another police complex before we allocate any funds to the development of an Indigenous community center, as outlined by the Mayor's Committee on Residential School Lands, is to support the perpetual disgrace that endangers and traumatizes our community, and to blatantly ignore the issues of police brutality, accountability, and over-militarization. I speak these words as a white woman with friends whose ancestors descend from every continent on Earth. The common thread that I consistently rediscover in my people is the fear and discomfort felt in the presence of police. This fear and discomfort is not only valid, it is an evolutionary advantage. It is the intuitive sense that tells us something must change. We are tired of hearing stories of our people being brutalized by RCPD. The system that we have constructed is fundamentally broken, designed to impoverish than to criminalize poverty. Thanks to science and data, we know that these practices are killing us. The military and prison industrial complexes stand in opposition to the flourishing of all life on Earth. Mass incarceration is a public health crisis, and the silver lining exists in our power to divest from our self-made problems and to invest instead in a habitable future which is not plagued by state violence against those of us who need fresh air, clean water, nourishing food, and accessible shelter. Public safety means investing in public housing, community permaculture, living wage jobs, access to physical and mental health services, as well as community-based education that centers Indigenous perspectives and practices. Expanding law enforcement while doing nothing to address the underlying issues of crime, that is poverty, homelessness, and addiction, is criminal. It is time for truth and reconciliation. I urge the City Council to urgently reflect on alternative measures to improve the quality of life for our community. Thank you.
Okay, that'll do it for general public comment. And now into non-public hearing items 2 through 26. We'll open public comment on those items. First, on item number 9, Troy Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Troy Erickson. I'm from MG Oil Company in Rapid City. I was looking at item number 9, and it has to do with issuing of malt beverage licenses and the attachment of video lottery. And we've been in that business since the beginning, actually. Have a number of malt beverage licenses along with casinos, and I see there was a lot of information for the council to look at, to think about reissuing of more licenses, and I just thought I would come, and if anyone had any questions of the past, the present, or anything like that, just to shoot away. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Steve Winya.
Good evening, Council Mayor, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Steve Winia. I'm requesting you release 2 of the 23 lottery licenses that are eligible for the release by the population guidelines that were set 25 years ago by the council. I'm building a new building out on Timmons Boulevard in excess of $1 million. I will be putting a casino, well, I would like to put a casino in one end, and then I would be bringing 3 to 4 businesses with me to that growing area. The new building will generate additional sales tax, property tax, lottery tax, whatever other tax I'm missing here. I believe that I have a legitimate request for this council to release 2 of the lottery licenses. There's not one lottery license available, not one for sale. I know who has the 4 inactive licenses. They are not for sale. I spoke with him a week ago. I believe if someone has an approved by the council location and there are no lottery licenses available, these 23 licenses should be released as necessary. I believe the 25-year-old ordinance should be scrapped or amended. A new ordinance put together on the release of these eligible lottery licenses. I would be happy to visit with anyone needing information or anybody has any questions on the facts on the lottery business. I thank you for your consideration on this matter, and hopefully we can get the ball rolling here. Thank you in advance.
Thank you. That'll close the public comment on these non-public hearing items. It takes us to consent items 2 through 24. The council have a motion on these items? Motion to approve by Jones. Second. Second by Evans. We'll go to Darla Drew.
Are we pulling items right now?
You can pull an item.
Okay. Yeah, 9.
Any other items to be pulled by council? If not, then I would ask the motion maker and the seconder if that motion would include the exception of item 9. Okay, all right. Okay, then the motion on the floor is to approve the consent with the exception of item 9. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9. Acknowledge report on retail malt beverage licenses eligible for video lottery. Darla Drew.
Thank you. I think that it was Mr. Erickson that asked if we had any questions, and so I would have a few for you. Okay, so we have 23 licenses available, and my question is, how many people own licenses in Rapid City? I know you guys kind of know each other, and is there more than 5? Is there less than 10? You know, what are we looking at here?
I would say 8 to 10
Okay.
of the 62 or 63 licenses are out there.
So how many would you recommend being released? What do you think?
I would say 6 to 10.
Okay, because you think our population has grown enough to support those? I mean, I do see businesses that have closed down that were, you know, casinos, and so I kind of wonder, what is the need?
Well, what's happened over time in the lottery business, every malt beverage license is eligible for 10 lottery machines. Okay, as things started in the beginning, you could make enough money to survive with 10 machines, but now it's pretty hard to make it with 10 machines. So as times went on, locations have closed and the licenses have moved, so there's 20 or 30 or 40 machines in one location. Thus being, we have less casinos on every corner, so you don't see a lot of them. And then the other thing that's changed since 1998, the city's created zoning regulations where they can go. I pretty much know in Rapid City, because I've been here so long and have so many locations, where these licenses are going to go. They're going to go on Rushmore Road, they're going to go on St. Pat, West Main, Haynes Avenue, or La Crosse. That's the only places they can put them. And all those corridors already have casinos with 20 or 30 or 40 machines. So when they do get issued, if there's 1 or 5 or 10, whatever it is, they're going to stack somewhere up and down those corridors right next to one of the other ones. Because everyone's smart, they drive by and say, well, there's 15 cars there, where should I be? Right next door. So over the years, the council's had a lot of people come and argue, we don't like casinos, we don't want them, they got to go away. You guys have got shot a lot of times because of this issue, so it's kind of a sticky issue. The town is growing. Back when this was put in 25 years ago, they came up with the number and said there was this many licenses out there, so we divided it out, and I think it's 843 people.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So can those locations be changed, or those routes be changed through us? Is that what you're asking for? You don't want them on those same routes?
Not necessarily. Through some of the regulation, it's because of church, school, crosswalk, undue concentration, too close. You could change some of that, but most of it works pretty good to keep them in our general business districts, so they're not going in someone's backyard. That's kind of like any general commercial business when they're not putting them out in a residential neighborhood, so they probably fit. I think there's probably enough licenses, but there's a lot of areas on the outskirts of town that are growing. Like where Steve's talking about, there's nothing out there as far as a casino. I mean, there's a few, but they're a long ways away. There are some areas on the outskirts of town through the center corridor of Rapid. They're pretty stacked in pretty tight right now.
Okay, so I'm going to run out of time here, but, you know, I do think the 25-year-old ordinance bears looking at, and, you know, maybe changing some of those things, making some of these things available. I am not anti-casino, so if that's something that we can look at for revenue for the city, that's not something that I'm going to oppose, so thank you.
Thank you.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I would be in support of issuing some of these licenses. I don't know if 8 to 10 is the number, or 4 or 6. I know there's a number in there somewhere. I've been on the council for 10 years watching these licenses stack up, stack up, stack up, and I think it's time that we revisit this ordinance. I think 843 is no longer the number. I mean, if we leave it there with the growth that we have in Rapid City, we're going to be gaining, you know, 3 or 4 licenses a year from here on out with some of the numbers that we're looking at, or every 2 years. So I think what this council should do is I think we should set up a committee. We should look at this ordinance, we should rewrite it to today and not 30, 25 years ago. I think that we should issue some licenses now. I think that the licenses to be issued in the future, I think that if we're going to issue them, we should issue them at a cost. I think that there should be some value to it. One of the things that would worry me is, you know, I think the last 2 or 3 licenses, I know one sold for $100,000, one sold for $80,000, one sold for $70,000. So they have a lot of value to them. You drop a bunch of them on the market at the cost of what the city is allowing them for right now, you can devalue those licenses, which isn't a good thing. We should never consider doing that. Also, if you did that, you could end up with a bunch of people just grabbing them and holding on to them. If you remember a few years back, I know Richie was here, when we put out the sidewalk vendor applications and one person grabbed them all up. So you got to be very careful how you do this. I think that a lot of that we can take care of in the ordinance. I completely agree with Steve and what he was saying, that we shouldn't even allow somebody to have a license unless they already have a location to put them in. So if somebody wants to come in and they want to get into the video lottery license business, they can do what other people do and go out and find a location and then apply for a license if they're there. And, you know, in the future, we get a few licenses, they may actually be enough out there that people will let loose of a few every now and then. So I think where we're at today, I think we should release a few of them, whether that's 4 or 6, and then I think we should go in and rewrite the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, motion to start the bidding at $70,000, I think I heard John say. Pat Jones.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mr. Winia, and if I'm not saying your name right, I apologize, but I think we need to pay a little more attention to the 4 inactive licenses. From what I understand, there's no expiration date. Someone can hold on to a license as long as they want, and I don't think that's good for the system or for the process. If someone's going to have a license, then it either needs to be used or they need to let go of it. 4 licenses, from what I understand from last Wednesday's meeting, are sitting inactive. You've questioned whoever owns them, and they won't sell them. So I think that puts perhaps even an artificial value on. Alderman Roberts is talking about the value of them, which I agree with. Holding them back like that raises it even more. So I think perhaps we might want to consider licenses having an expiration date, and if someone doesn't use them, they come back into the pool to be issued to people who want to use them, and we'll put them to the use that they're there for. Hoarding of the licenses I don't think does anyone any good and causes these exact kind of situations. And whether you like video lottery or don't like video lottery isn't the discussion at the table right now. It's, is the hoarding of the licenses interfering with someone's right to do business? And I think we need to consider that as well if we form a committee and move forward with this, because I don't see where that does anyone any good. Thank you.
Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have a question for Mr. Landine. So,
Sure.
my question would be, if we decide to release some licenses tonight, and there is some concern obviously coming from the council and maybe some of the people that have licenses, valuation, which, I mean, government ebbs and flows happen all the time. Government regulation happens all the time. People win, people lose. If we put a price on these licenses, other than what the par value is that even legal for the city to do? That would be my question, Mr. Mayor.
You know, I would have trouble answering that tonight. I think, yes, I would have to look at what our valuations are, and if there's any restrictions. Some of the licenses, I think, have restrictions on what the value can be set at. And, you know, there's always issues when you try to convert issuance of a license into a revenue generator if it's not statutorily allowed. I think there's also, in the past, there's maybe a process for how those are issued. So I think if you're inclined to do it, maybe we probably wait till the next meeting and put it on to, and we answer some of those questions, like what the value of the licenses are going to be and what the process for issuance of those licenses are. Because I think you are hearing some, I mean, I think in the past we've done a lottery, and so that wouldn't necessarily help Mr. Winia or his problem. And again, I think from what I'm hearing, you would rather avoid having a situation where if you do a lottery and somebody gets them and then sits on them. So how do we avoid that situation if we're going to issue those?
Thank you, Mr. Landine. I think that I will support if someone makes the motion to have a committee, but I want a time frame on it that's within short order, like maybe within a couple council meetings, that we come to a real quick conclusion about how we go forward. Either we change these things, maybe change the amount of people that it requires to issue another license, like Mr. Roberts had mentioned, going from 840 to 1,250 or whatever, and see, it'll give Mr. Landine some time to look at the laws to see if there is some value to an artificial price of whatever that number may be, 25,000, 50,000 or whatever, or if it's a $250 value, we could just lay that all out and make the criteria fit that, because if you don't have a location, the license is basically useless and worthless to the taxpayers of the community if it's not being used. So since I spoke, I can't really make that motion to form a committee, but if someone else wants to do that, I'd support it. Thank you.
Greg STROMMEN.
Thank you, Mayor. May I direct a question to Mr. Landine also?
Yes, sir.
Joel, kind of taking off of what Mr. Weifenbach said, what would be a reasonable timeline to rework the ordinance, do you think? I'm assuming that your office would be guiding us through that process.
Correct. You know, that's tough to say. I mean, are you going to issue some, I guess, maybe some clarification, because I think what I understood Alderman Weifenbach to be talking about was maybe issue a couple under the current license so we don't have to wait for the ordinance and then look at a longer-term ordinance amendment. But I think even if you want to issue a few of the licenses now, we do need to look at what we're going to charge for them and how we're going to actually, how that's going to work so that we don't create additional problems.
Okay, thank you. I would be in support of what I think Alderman Roberts is moving towards too, but I would like to move with some dispatch here because we have a 25-year-old ordinance that we obviously need to bring up to date, and we also have some legitimate requests by these businessmen and business owners to move on what we already have in the inventory. And I agree with Alderman Jones that this is not a commodity that we don't want it to be trading back and forth, but it is something that we need to address, and so I'd be in favor of what Alderman Roberts is proposing.
Okay, I have a follow-up question for Mr. Landine. If the council chooses to release a couple of these licenses, what would be the process for that?
I would defer to Pauline.
Yep, I
Assumption?
did know that one's coming. So it is a lottery system. They have to fill out an application. We have to put in the paper that we have released X number of licenses. If you are interested in it, submit an application. At the time of the resolution, it was $250 for malt beverage, but now it's $300. So we would charge the $300. That would have to be attached. It would be a drawing, the first meeting in September, according to the resolution, and whoever was drawn for those would have until June 30th of the following year to get everything in order to get their license. If they fail to have everything in order by June 30th, then they no longer have the license. But it is a complete drawing. It's a blind drawing. There's no guarantee that anybody would get one.
Okay, more specifically, would a motion to direct staff to get a couple of these licenses dusted off and get them ready, would that be appropriate tonight, Mr. Landine?
Yes, I think you could direct staff. I guess the question is, do you want to try to see if we can issue a few earlier, and then that would buy us time to work on an ordinance, or do you want to just go for an ordinance amendment?
Okay. All right. John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion, then I want to ask Joel a couple questions too. But I'd like to make a motion to release 6 video lottery licenses now and set up a committee within the next 30 days to help rewrite this ordinance. If I can get a second.
Second by Drew. Go ahead.
So, Joel, the way that looking at the resolution that was written in '93, so there's a $250 fee to apply for this license, or was that just the fee for the liquor license?
Joel Landine.
Okay. And my question there is if there's a $250 non-refundable fee to apply for the license already in the resolution, if we change that to a fee that makes it high enough to keep people out that are just going to buy these to hold on to these. Okay, if you're looking at a value right now across the board, let's say $60,000, $70,000 for a license right now, and we put in a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 application fee, that will keep the people from buying them and sticking them in the closet and not using them. So anyway, I think that's something that as a committee we can talk about, but I think there's a lot of good options, a lot of good ideas. I think there's a couple of people in the audience that would like to be on that committee, and I think we should always have the stakeholders on these committees, and I would even be happy to chair the committee. Anyway, thank you.
Just going to bask in that for a minute. All right, we have a motion and a second to release 6 of these licenses, get them set up, as I understand it, for the September process, and then set up a committee made of council members and citizens within the next 30 days to take a crack at the license. Am I reading that correctly? Staff too. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay? That'll take us through the consent items. Now into non-consent items 25 and 26. There are no speaker requests on these items. So we'll start with item 25 under ordinances. First reading of ordinance 6456, an ordinance to amend and adopt provisions of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to animals in Title VI. This was continued from the June 21st meeting, and the recommendation is to continue it to the August 2nd meeting. Motion to continue by Weifenbach, second by STROMMEN. Pat Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to make that motion. I was part of the meetings and part of the process, but everything has moved forward wonderfully with this. It just Kelsey, is that her name? The attorney that's working with this? Kinsley, thank you. She was unavailable for this meeting, and so she requested, and we said we'd honor to move it till she was back and out of town. So that's the only reason it's being moved. Great work has been done on it, and it's basically ready to go. Humane Society meeting is tomorrow night. Anything else that they want to add to it, we'll look at, but very much ready to move forward, and appreciate tabling it until Kinsley's able to be here. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to move this to August 2nd. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under working session items, item 25A, authorize staff to apply for the 2022 Bridge Improvement Grant funds for preliminary engineering work for the Chapel Lane Bridge and to accept the funds if awarded. Motion to approve by Solomon, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 25B, approve COVID hazard pay for first responders, police, and fire. Go to Bill Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because of the gravity and importance of this particular item, I'm going to move to table it, and when we table it here, it can be brought up at the next work session, because I think that's where this discussion needs to take place, rather than tonight. I don't believe we addressed this particular issue at the last work session, but I think it deserves a lot of discussion, so I'm making a motion now to table this until the next work session. So I need a second for that.
Second. Second by Lance Lehman, and no discussion on a tabling motion. Point of order. What is your point of order? Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that there's a couple of factors to consider within our policies and procedures that and I understand the argument, but as a tabling motion, it only applies to resolution and ordinances. As far as I can tell, this has not made it to the stage of either an ordinance or a resolution. So I would not be supporting the motion as stated right now, but the concept of moving this to a working session, I can agree with that. But as a table, no.
Mr. Landine, have an opinion?
I don't think a tabling motion is appropriate if you want to continue it. A tabling motion disposes of the item.
Not according to our rules. I've got them right in front of me.
What are you looking at?
Well, it says scope of motions laid on the table apply to the main question or proposed amendment, and motion shall clearly state which is attended. Let's see. Motion to take from the table. Whenever a motion is laid on the table, it requires a majority of the vote of the members to take it from the table. A motion laid on the table may be taken from the table at any subsequent council meeting. So basically, we stop discussion now. We continue where we were at the next time.
Well, and I would agree you can take an item from the table at a subsequent council meeting, although we've never really done that. And then the issue is having sufficient notice on the agenda. I mean, traditionally, when we've wanted to continue something, we've just said, let's continue it to the next working session rather than calling it a table. I think you're also reading out of Robert's Rules of Order, where you have a policies and procedures that has slightly different language and things on tabling motions. And
well, this is the discussion we got into several months ago when I pointed we weren't following Robert's rules, and you pointed that these are our rules. So I'm reading from our rules now. So I guess I got to know which set we're working with.
I was looking at 5.6. Which
5.6, which says what?
It says, a motion to lay on the table which affects a disposition on the merits of any ordinance or resolution requires a vote of the majority of the members. So, I mean, traditionally, again, we've used tabling motions to dispose of a motion or dispose of an item basically that we don't want to discuss again. I mean, that is traditionally how a tabling motion has been used. Kind of like you pointed out during that last discussion, if a legislature tables something, it generally disposes of it.
Well,
and that's how
the point of going to a
traditionally used
tabling
it.
rather than delay it or anything is I wanted to avoid having the discussion 3 times in a row rather than, you know, and postpone it until Wednesday so we have that at an appropriate time rather than do it tonight, do it again Wednesday, and then do it again at the next council meeting. That's my logic. So, I mean, I can withdraw that if we're willing to just postpone the discussion to that later point.
I think I'll allow the tabling motion, but as I understand it, then it will have to be voted to take off the table at the next.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
What's
The
your
point of
point of
order
order?
is the fact that a tabling motion under Robert's Rules of Orders, go back to November of 2004 when this council decided to use Robert's Rules of Orders as part of their policies and procedures. One of the points of order for a tabling motion is that the reason you table something, there's a couple of reasons you do it. One, just like Mr. Landine had said, is to quash the minority in an issue, so there's no discussion. The other one is, the legitimate one is because something happened. Something happened that we need to stop what we're doing and just move on. And I think it's 7:15, so we have plenty of time to talk about the motion. So I think a tabling motion would be out of order here. That would be the point of order that I make, because we have plenty of time to talk about it. There's no other pressing information. It's almost the last item on the agenda. So that'd be my point of order, if we follow Robert's Rules of Orders.
Well, evidently, we have our own rules, which trump the Robert Rules of Order. And I'm just trying to follow our rules. I guess we've got to make our mind up what we're following.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on my point of order, I know Councilman Evans is reading another section within the policies and procedures, but I would also encourage the council members to look at 5.2 of our policies and procedures. That's where I'm getting my position from, is that it applies to ordinances and resolutions, and this has not made it to that stage. So the table in motion is out of order.
Mr. Landine, 5.2.
I don't have the policies and procedures in front of me.
Mr. Evans?
Used to be able
5.2, withdraw motion, oh, it says rescind, is this what he's talking about? Is that 5.2? I mean, I've got our set of our rules there, I'm not sure, because 5.2, to me, isn't that what it is? That's 5.2.
You know, the thing I worry about practically is just that if you want to discuss it at the working session, that it be on the agenda so that people know it's going to be discussed. Whereas, so do we put a motion to draw off the table, or do we just have the item on the agenda? But I think the important thing is, if you don't want to have the discussion tonight and you are willing to have it at the working session, that the public be given notice that the discussion about the bonus is going to occur at that time.
Well, I'd be willing to withdraw this if we could have a gentleman's agreement that we save our discussion until the appropriate time where we have some fact-finding and some notice, because I believe this was dropped on us tonight without the appropriate amount of discussion leading up to it. So if we could do that and not air the linen tonight, I would withdraw this. I think we need to save it until people have some time to prepare.
Mr. Mayor, would it be appropriate just to acknowledge this and then have it put on the next agenda?
Well, the motion we have now is a tabling motion. There's some objection to that. We've found a way to make that okay. And so let's just rule in the point of order and say the tabling motion is appropriate for this item under these circumstances, and we'll see this then on Wednesday's working session. Okay, so that's the ruling, and then there's no further discussion on the tabling motion. So all in favor of the tabling motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Jones,
No.
Lehman,
Aye.
Solomon, Evans,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Nordstrom,
No.
Weifenbach, Roberts, Stroman, Armstrong. Motion tied, 5-5.
Okay, chair votes aye. Move on to the next item. And that would be under appeals. Item 26, assessment appeal, Nick Kuchenbecker. The staff recommendation to deny. Are you in the queue for this one, Richie? Or last one? The last one or this one?
I'm on this one. This item.
Okay, we have a motion by Darla Drew to deny. Is there a second?
The
Lance Lehman, please.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to table it per the applicant. The applicant wants to withdraw their appeal.
Okay, then we have a motion to withdraw the appeal, and it's seconded by Jason Solomon. Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Under public hearing items, item 27, there's no speaker requests. We'll go straight to item 27, alcohol licenses, Performing Arts Center for special event, on-sale malt beverage license, an on-sale wine license, an off-sale package wine license, and an off-sale package dealer license for an event scheduled for July 31st, 2021 at Black Hills Energy. Motion to approve Jones and second by Lehman. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries, I'm pretty sure. And now this takes us down to item 28, which is the bill list. Pauline Sumption, Finance Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no additions to the bill list, so the total is that which is attached at $7,085,655.19.
Second.
Motion to approve Solomon, second by Jones. All in favor of the bill list being approved, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn Lehman. Second by someone, Stroman. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.